record the class, and I'll try to upload this on YouTube for those who missed today. I recommend don't miss any classes. Okay, that's the main thing. All right, so let's get started. So yeah, but that is okay. Sunday morning I have another class. So that's the revision class, right? Okay, it's not a must to attend the revision class if you're already a member of the theory class. Okay, so I have given you all the options, guys. Let's say for example, let's say if you are missing the revision class, forget it, no problem, right? We'll get you the recording, and yeah, can be done, right? The technology is so advanced, right? But you can come to this class, right? You can come to this class, and also you can join our grade 10 class, no problem, there's no restriction. Okay, I will admit you there. So you can at the same time you can cover your grade 10 content as well as grade 11 content. Okay, so I have given you three options, guys: grade 10, 11, and you have your revision class. Okay, so what I'm trying to do here is like, okay, I'm inviting you to all the classes so you guys can come and mingle with history, spend a little more time. I know what you're doing, right? I mean, you're not spending much time learning history, right? So at least come to this class, we'll talk, we'll have some fun, and then we'll mingle with history, and we'll have more contact with history. Okay, so there's a big chance that you will remember a lot of things that we talk in this class. That's the main thing, right? So yeah. And parents meeting, yes, I have planned a parents meeting end of this month, hopefully, or the beginning of next month, right? Things, everything falls back to normal, and yeah, a few more students will be joining as well. So we'll have a parents meeting, where we will actually discuss how you guys are gonna, how you basically, how your parents are gonna help you, and how you guys need to study, and everything will be spoken with your parents. Okay, so yeah, so you will have more support uh, from your parents when you are like going towards this journey, right? So it's it's challenging, right? February, I think 23rd is the date they have fixed the exams. So yeah, there's like 5 months left. You have a lot of subjects to study. History is one of them. So yeah, it's challenging, we know that, but there's no other way around, right? There's no shortcuts to this. Focus, just focus. Okay, 5 more months. You don't think about anything else. Don't think about what's happening in the country or what's happening in the world. Yeah, they can wait. Okay, fine, fine. You're gonna die. You're gonna die. You're gonna die, right? Nobody can stop it. I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die, right? Nothing can stop it. But focus, right? That's the main thing. There's only 5 months left. We don't know. We don't know what's coming next. Maybe the exams will get pushed back. I don't know. We don't know. We'll hope it won't happen like that, because end of the day, we can't afford to have these things dragging every day, right? So focus for January. Think, okay, your exam is in January, and work, right? Don't think it's in February. Think of the exams, as if it's gonna be held in December, and then work, right? Okay. So guys, we were discussing about the decline of the ancient cities in the dry zone, and the origin of new kingdoms in the southwest. All right. So we know that the first two kingdoms in Sri Lanka, Anuradhapura and Polonnaruwa. Okay. They were
Sir,
very, yeah.
sir, should we note down what you are
No, no, no,
typing?
no, 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 not now. Not now. I'll tell
Sir,
you.
then sir, are you giving a note?
Yeah, I will share it with you in a while. Okay. So this is just an explanation. Okay, no need to write this. All right, so we know that Anuradhapura and Polonnaruwa. Anuradhapura kingdom itself, it was there for like 1,400 years, right? Polonnaruwa kingdom, something around 200 years. Yeah. So these two kingdoms are very powerful, right? Basically, these two kingdoms now, let's say when Anuradhapura kingdom was there in Sri Lanka, basically it was all Anuradhapura kingdom in Sri Lanka. Okay, that means the whole the full country was controlled by Anuradhapura. Polonnaru was also like that. Okay, but we know that we spoke about this 2 weeks ago. That's, you know, there were several reasons for the downfall of Polonnaru kingdom. We discussed that in our previous video. If you have not watched that video, please go back and watch it. It's uploaded in YouTube. Okay, so tell me a main reason. Let's quickly reflect on this. Let's take 2 minutes to do this. Tell me one of the main reasons for the downfall of Polonnaru kingdom. Somebody?
Invasion of Kalinga.
Invasion of Kalingamaga. Yeah, that was the immediate reason, imminent reason, the most important reason, as well as the immediate reason for the downfall of Polonnaru kingdom, invasion of Kalingamaga. Yes. And anything else? Yeah. So let's talk about the background that led to the downfall of Polonnaru kingdom.
Sir?
Yeah.
Sir, is this grade 10 or grade 11?
Grade 10, lesson number 7.
Okay.
Who can?
Sir, I was not there for grade 10 7 lesson. I came last week.
It's okay. Yeah, the video is uploaded in YouTube. Okay. Anything else? Any other reasons you can think of? We wrote the answer for our essay questions as well, right? You remember, guys? Menuka, do you remember?
Conflict between Kalingas
Yes.
and Pandyan.
Okay, there were internal conflicts between Kalinga and Pandyan clans or families, dynasties. Okay, ruling families, basically. If you
Weak
think of,
rulers coming to power.
yeah, exactly. Weak rulers came to power. Now rulers came and rulers went. People come and people go, something like that, right? Kings come, they stay for a few years and they go, right? If there's no proper king, there's no powerful king like King Parakram Bahu the Great, King Vijay Bahu the Great, King Dutugamunu. There are no kings like that. King came and they had problems, they left. You know, 5 years, 3 years, 2 years. You really don't have enough time to build an empire, build a kingdom, right? So the kingdom's strength started declining, going down, right? And weak rulers come into power, and the clashes between the Kalinga and Pandyan king dynasties, families or clans. Clans means groups, okay? And also the economic deterioration, because when there are conflicts, when there are problems, the economy will also suffer definitely, because there's no enough focus or attention paid towards building agriculture, building irrigation systems, and everything. So those are the reasons that the Polonnaru kingdom started falling down. Now I'm gonna share with you guys the new tune that I made for your lesson, right? Okay, so now guys, when we come to this lesson, okay, there are several things that you need to remember very, very well. The order of these kingdoms, okay, and the significant events that took place during these times. Okay, now we already discussed what happened in Anuradhapura kingdom. We spoke about several important kings who ruled Anuradhapura kingdom, like King Pandukabe, King Dutugamunu, how they contributed towards centralizing of power. King Vasabha. We discussed about those kings. When it comes to kings in Polonnaru, we spoke a little about King Vijay Bahu the Great, what service he did to the country and everything, right? Now we have come to this, Dambadeni. Now we know that Polonnaru kingdom, right? Polonnaru kingdom, after the invasion of Kalingamaga, Polonnaru kingdom was destroyed and Kalingamaga started ruling Polonnaru. There was no Polonnaru kingdom under the control of a Sinhala king or Sri Lankan king. Okay. The invader Kalingamaga continued ruling Polonnaru. Now, what happened to our people? Like, what happened to our powerful people, like, let's say, chieftains, relatives of the kings? When Polonnaru kingdom fell to the hands of Kalingamaga, what happened to them? They moved towards the south. They moved towards the southwest, basically. and they were looking for a good place, a protected, safe place where they can basically organize themselves and defeat Kalinga. That was the main idea. Okay, so the names of these kingdoms in their order should be in your memory. Okay, should be in your memory. Remember very well. Can you all see my screen, guys? Yeah, that you.
Yes, sir.
All right. So look at this. Kingdoms of Sri Lanka. Anuradhapura, Polonnaru, we already know those two. After that is Dambadeniya. Dambadeniya, right? Go to page number. You have a map there. I will share the map to again with you guys. Right? Go to page number 101, please. Grade 10, page number 101. You see a map. Can you all go there and locate Dambadeniya for me, please? This is very important for map marking as well. Okay, Dambadeniya. Let me just try and share. Yeah, Vetum, I will answer your question. Okay, we are gonna, yeah, we'll go a little slowly. Okay, right. We'll see what happened to Kalinga. Can you all locate Dambadeniya in the Sri Lankan map in page number 101, guys? I want all of you to locate that place. Okay, so you have an idea where Dambadeniya was. It's little near Kurunagal. Can you see that? Towards Nigambu and Chilla. That area is called Dambadeniya. Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right. Everybody found it. Anybody have difficulty in finding it? Please tell me now. Dambadeniya. Okay. Then after Dambadeniya, look, these kingdoms, they didn't last for centuries. Only a few kings, most of the time, only a few kings ruled these kingdoms. And let's say Dambadeniya was ruled by a few kings, and then they decided, okay, Dambadeniya is not a safe place. Let's go to Yapahu and establish a new kingdom there. Okay, I'm gonna choose Yapahu as my capital because Yapahu is safer than Dambadeniya. Then the next king went to Yapahu. He started ruling the country from there. Then Kurunagal, Gampola, like that. Okay, so it's like the kingdoms started shifting places. Right. Earlier it was like Anuradhapura. Definitely Anuradhapura. So the next king is gonna be like ruling the country from Anuradhapura. Why? Because Anuradhapura is so developed, big city. Everything that is necessary for a capital was there. But these kingdoms are like makeshift kingdoms. It's like not permanent, not so powerful either. Okay, we need to understand that. So after Polonnaru, it was I'd say it was Kotte kingdom that became very powerful at a certain time. Then Kandyan kingdom also became very powerful later. Until then, all these kingdoms are like not so powerful, and shifting from one place to another. But significant events took place during the these kingdoms. We are going to learn about those things under this lesson. So this lesson is very important because of those reasons. Okay, because of the order of these kingdoms and also the significant events that took place during these times. Because they might ask you a few questions like, okay, what happened? May make in the order, like according to the order in history, what event took place after what. Right. So in order to answer those type of questions, we need to understand which kingdom was established first, which kingdom was next, and like that. Okay. So Dambadeniya, after Dambadeniya, can you see in page number 101 Yapahuwa towards the north in the map, towards Anuradhapura. If you go from Dambadeniya towards Anuradhapura, can you see Yapahuwa?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Then you have Kurunagal. Again, Kurunagal. then you have Gampola, right? And you have Kotte, Kandy, Jaffna. I put all these three together because of a reason, right? Kotte, after Gampola, it was Kotte kingdom. During the time of Kotte itself, Kandyan kingdom was born in the middle of the country. Okay, that's why I put all these three together. And Jaffna kingdom was also there. There was a kingdom in Jaffna as well. It's like a semi-official kingdom, something like under the Kotte kingdom itself. At times it was under the Kotte kingdom, at times it was an independent kingdom, but later they had problems, they fought each other, and later on the Portuguese invaded Jaffna kingdom and they captured it. Okay, that will be discussed in lesson number 10 in grade 10. Okay, right, so it can wait. Okay, it's not very important here, but over here it's very important to learn about these 5 kingdoms. Okay, Dambadini, Yabaho, Kurunagala, Gampola, and Kotte. Kotte also we won't be going very deep into it, right? But let's see the background of these kingdoms. Okay, now we
Excuse
know
me, sir.
that, yeah.
Sir, during the time of a Kotte period only, Jaffna kingdom was born.
No, it was born before that. It was born before that. I will come to that. Okay, give me a second. Yeah.
Okay,
So
sir.
we'll start with Dambadini. We'll go in the order. Okay, we'll go in the order. Then we can understand this, right? Very well. So the second, this is called the second urbanization, guys. The first urbanization is Anuradhapura, Polonnaruwa, Magama, those urbanizations. We call the first urbanization. Second urbanization means these few kingdoms that we just discussed about. Dambadini, Yabahu, Kurunagala, Gampola, Kotte, those kingdoms. Okay. So let's talk about Dambadiniya kingdom a little bit, right? So there was a king called King Vijayabahu the third, right? Now we know that in 1215, 1215 AD, now you guys have to read the book a little bit, okay? In 1215 AD, Kalingamaga invaded Polonnaruwa and he captured Polonnaruwa. Now different, there were like different chieftains, like, military leaders and everybody, they went to the south and they established different places and, forts and everything to protect themselves. So it's like basically there was no king in Sri Lanka between 1215 and 1232. Okay, it was like a transition period where Kalingamaga continued to rule the kingdom of Polonnaruwa, and where the other rulers who were there in Sri Lanka, like the people who were defeated by war, I mean people of our country or the leaders of our country, they didn't have a proper place, so they just tried to live in their own areas, protecting their own areas. Okay, right? So during this time, right, King Vijayabahu III came to power. Give me a second, guys. So, let me share this. So I'm not taking you very deep into these things. You don't have to, right? What you have to remember, I'm teaching you here, right? So Dambadini kingdom was founded by King Vijayabahu the third in 1232, right? Now, who was ruling Polonnaruwa? Kalingamaga was ruling Polonnaruwa, right? And he was able to do several things. Who? King Vijayabahu the third. He brought the sacred tooth relics, the Dalada Karanduva. When you possess that, it was customary, it was tradition that if you possess the Dalada Karanduva, that means you are eligible to become the king in the country. That was the ancient belief, So because of that, he managed to somehow get hold of Dalada Karanduva, which was hidden somewhere. He brought it to his kingdom. He established the Dambadini kingdom. He made Dalada Maligawa in Beligala, and then he established, he positioned the sacred relics there, and he was then started to be honored as the king of the country. Okay, so those two things are
Excuse me, sir.
important about King Vijayabahu the third. Yes.
So only the chieftains and military people shifted from Polonnaruwa to the southern part, or even some people they shifted.
People also shifted because, you know, Kalinga Maga's destruction was so immense that he actually looted, he ransacked, destroyed almost everything in Polonnaruwa, right? So many people also shifted. A lot of people also shifted. Some might have been, you know, kept by force, but, you know, many people also shifted, right? So, okay, got it?
Yeah, sir. Thank
And
you.
then after, listen, now this is very important, okay? Now, when we talk about a kingdom, the king who founded that kingdom is very important, okay? So Dambadeniya, when I say Dambadeniya, King Vijayabahu the third should come into head, okay? King Vijayabahu the third, or King Vijayabahu number 3, he is the one who founded Dambadeniya kingdom, okay? Then the next important king is the king who did a lot of service to the kingdom, okay? He was King Vijayabahu the third's son, King Parakramabahu the second. Now we already know that King Parakramabahu the Great or King Parakramabahu the first was a great king who lived in Polonnaruwa kingdom, right? Who even built Parakrama Samudra, right? So he's a great king. So King Parakramabahu too is not the son of King Parakramabahu the Great, but he was the son of King Vijayabahu the third of Dambadeniya kingdom. Okay, so look at this. King Parakramabahu the second of Dambadeniya. He was the son of King Vijayabahu the third, right? Now King Parakramabahu the second was a very educated king. He was really very well educated under the guidance of chief monks. Okay, he possessed a lot of knowledge when it comes to Sinhala literature and everything, right? So Kausilumina is considered one of the greatest Sinhala literary works or texts. It was written by this king, King Parakramabahu the second. Okay, so he possessed a lot of knowledge in when it comes to literature, so that he was even given this title called I think I missed my spellings here a little bit. Give me a second, guys. Kalikala. One second, please. Yeah, I saw that Khalil, not Kalilaka, Kalikala. Kalikala Sahitya Sarvagna Pandit. Sarvagna Pandit. Kalikala means Sahitya means literature. Kalikala means, you know, the time, related to time. Sarvagna means everything. Pandita means you are actually the best. You know, Pandit Amaradeva, you know, was a great singer or musician who lived in Sri Lanka. He died. So why you call it Pandita means it's like a title that you are actually an expert in what you're doing, right? So you call it Pandit. Pandite you scold somebody, right? Pandite, don't be a Pandite. That means you know everything about a particular subject. So this title was given to King Parakramabahu the second. Okay, because he wrote many books, including Kausilumina. Kausilumina is considered one of the best Sinhala literary sources to date. Okay, and now look the challenges he faced. Now King Kalingamaga, invader Kalingamaga was ruling Polonnaruwa kingdom on one side, but he also faced an additional invasion from a king called Chandrabanu, who came from Malay Peninsula, who came from Southeast Asia. Chandrabanu, okay, he came, and King Parakramabahu the second's army was able to defeat him as well, and also he managed to defeat Kalingamaga after many battles. He somehow, King Parakramabahu the second, managed to defeat Kalingamaga. Okay, and the first Chandrabanu was defeated once, and then he attacked again, and then he you know, King Parakramabahu too managed to repel the attack, second attack by Chandrabanu as well, with the help of the Pandyan Empire in India. So we know that, you know, we had very good relationships with India. You know, we had invasions as well, like Kalingamaga also came from India and invaded us, but with other, you know, with many empires, we also maintained very healthy relationships. So from time to time, whenever we needed help, we were able to get those help from those kingdoms as well. So this is one good example that King Parakram Bahu II got the help of Pandyan Empire to defeat the second invasion attempt by Chandrabanu. Where did Chandrabanu come from? From Malay Peninsula, Malaysia, modern day Malaysia.
Sir,
Okay, yeah.
sir, I think that Chandrabanu came for Sri Lanka to take the sacred truth relic.
Look, Malaysia and Indonesia was a Hindu country those days. Okay, so Hindu or Buddhist both, right? Like mixed. It recently only became like 500, I think 500, 600 days ago it became a Muslim country, right? So before that, so they basically came to, you know, when somebody is invading someone, there can be different reasons. Okay, let's say for example, if Kalingamaga invaded us, if somebody from India invaded us, that means basically they want to expand their geographical area, right? They want to attach more land to their country. Basically, that's the main thing. Or they want to loot. They want to loot, or you can call it plundering. So plundering means you basically go to a place and you take all the valuable artifacts and the gems and all the valuable stuff, right? So that can be a reason, or maybe political reasons, maybe just for the land, maybe for religious reasons, like you said, uh, taking sacred relics and everything, right? Okay, so Chandrabanu came, they wanted to possess some sacred relics, so that is why he came, right? Okay, so let's go to the next one. That's Yapahu kingdom. Sorry, after King Parakram Bahu II, King Vijay Bahu IV came to power. That's not so important, but I have put it here, right? Okay, anyway. Yapahu kingdom. Let's go to the Yapahu kingdom.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, during the Dambadaniya period, only Kalingamaga and Parakram Bahu II was ruling.
Kalingamaga was ruling Polonnaruwa. Okay. Now
Polonnaruwa.
these are two places. Okay, you have to understand that, right? Dambadaniya is not near Polonnaruwa, right? Polonnaruwa was ruled by Kalingamaga. Then Vijay Bahu III established Dambadaniya, right? And then his son came to power, Parakram Bahu II. Now what he wants to do is he wants to chase Kalingamaga out, which he did. But even after doing that, he didn't go to Polonnaruwa and become the king in Polonnaruwa. He continued to rule the country from Dambadeniya. Got it?
Yes, I wanted to ask that soon after he defeated Kalingamaga, did he rule the entire country, only the Dambadaniya kingdom?
When you defeat somebody, right? I mean, when he was ruling Polonnaruwa already, basically when you capture Polonnaruwa, when you defeat somebody, Polonnaruwa will automatically be part of your country, right? Yeah, but it will be attached to Dambadeniya kingdom. Okay, now there's no Polonnaruwa kingdom anymore. After Kalingamaga captured Polonnaruwa, it's Kalingamaga's area. There's no Polonnaruwa kingdom, right? It was Dambadeniya kingdom. So let's say Dambadeniya kingdom defeated Polonnaruwa, it won't become Polonnaruwa kingdom. It will be part of Dambadeniya kingdom. You know what I mean?
Oh, yes, sir. Thank you.
Let's say this is Dambadeniya kingdom. Okay, this is Polonnaruwa kingdom. Now there's no, officially there's no Polonnaruwa kingdom because Kalingamaga was an invader. We can't consider him as an official king of Polonnaruwa kingdom because he's an invader. He came from outside, right? So this is Dambadeniya. Okay, D. This is Polonnaruwa, P. Now Kalingamaga is here, right? KM, Kalingamaga, right? So who's here now? Parakram Bahu?
The second.
The second, yeah. So he defeated Kalingamaga. Now what will happen to this? He will defeat him and he will shift Dambadeniya here? Oh no, he is already established. his city is this. So he will attach this here, right? He will attach Polonnaruwa here and rule the country. Okay. But what we have to understand is, after the fall of Polonnaruwa, things never became the same. Okay. Now let's say, let's go to your past. Okay. Tell me a period where you lived so happily. Like, let's say, okay, I don't know, maybe you are very happy now, yeah, which is very good. But sometimes when you go to the past, right, you might feel like good old days, like let's say somebody came to your place from, maybe your relative, somebody, that 1 month, like let's say it was a school vacation, so how you enjoyed, how you went to place and everything. Things, you see about the past, but things will never be the same again, right? I mean, it's not like that. I mean, if let's say you are 15 years old, you are 16 years old, go back to when you were in grade 3 or grade 4, you had a great time, but you still remember that. So it's like a good old day, golden days, something like that. So Anuradhapura, Polonnaruwa also like golden days of historical times, but things never became the same again after the invasion of Kalinga. So that's why, I told you in our previous video that I myself consider that fall of Polonnaruwa is a turning point in Sri Lankan history, where things never became the same again. Yeah, that is why we are here. Maybe we could have been a very developed country in the whole region if Polonnaruwa did not fall. But Polonnaruwa fell because of our own mistakes, because of internal fighting, because of weak rulers coming to power, because of different reasons. So we have to understand that. This is what we are trying to learn here. Okay, right. So let's go to Yapahua Kingdom. Now, Yapahua Kingdom was founded by a king called King Bhunekabahu the First. Okay, King Bhunekabahu the First was the son of King Vijayabahu IV, who ruled Dambadeniya Kingdom. Okay, now King Bhunekabahu I chose Yapahua as his ruling center. Okay, now he faced several challenges. Several invaders came from South India. I'm not going to mention all the names and everything here, not very super important, right? You have to read the book, then you will come through those names and everything. But what we need to understand is a significant event that took place during the time of King Bhunekabahu the First. Now, when I say King Vijayabahu III, King Parakrambahu the Second, or King Vijayabahu the Third, you have to remember that they are attached to Dambadeniya Kingdom. Okay. When I say King Bhunekabahu I, you have to attach that name to Yapahua Kingdom. You have to remember this very carefully and very well. Okay. So Bhunekabahu I, or Bhunekabahu the First, he was the son of King Vijayabahu the Fourth. Okay. So several invaders also came from South India during his time. Right. So then he decided, like, from Dambadeniya, I want to go and establish my kingdom in Yapahua, because Yapahua was considered much safer than Dambadeniya. So that's why King Bhunekabahu I decided to go to Yapahua and establish his kingdom there. Okay. Now there's one very special thing about him when it comes to relationships with other countries. He maintained very good relationships with Egypt, an Arab country, especially Cairo. Cairo is the capital of Egypt. So he maintained good trade relationships with Egypt. It's mentioned in the historical sources. Okay. And then after the death of King Bhunekabahu the First, there was another invasion from Arya Chakravarti from Pandyan Kingdom. Okay. From Pandyan Kingdom. So there was another invasion. So, when we just started talking about Polonnaruwa Kingdom and Dambadeniya Kingdom, Yapahua Kingdom, we hear a lot of invasions, right? Yeah, invasions from Chandrabhanu, invasions from Kalingamag, invasions from now Arya Chakravarti, and invasions from South India. Yeah, here, this one, several invaders came from South India. We can understand the nature of the nature of the strength of the kingdoms in Sri Lanka. They had to face so many invasions. That means everybody is trying to invade. Why? Because the kingdoms are not powerful as it used to be before. We have to understand that. Okay, right? So you can see that many invasions. During Dambadiniya invasions, during Nyapaho kingdom invasion, during Polonnaruwa invasions. Right? So let's understand that as well. Yeah, this is what we can understand from this. All right. Moving on to the next one, guys. It's it's Kurunagala kingdom. Okay. Now I put something important here within brackets in front of Kurunagala kingdom itself, because it's very important. That is the reason I put it here itself, so you can remember both together. Okay, we are also going to learn about which kings ruled Kurunagala, and also we're going to learn about something important that took place during the time of Kurunagala kingdom. So the translation of Pansiya Panas Jataka Pota. You know, there's a Buddhist scripture called Pansiya Panas Jatake. You know that the guys who are learning Buddhism, they know this, right? Actually, how many Jataka stories are there in there? Yeah. Who can tell me about Pansiya Panas Jatake? Yes, exactly. 547 Jataka stories are there. So because it's, you know, like it's very close to 550, that's why we call it. You can't call it Pansiya Hatalis Hat Jataka Pota, so it's very difficult. So it's easy, you know, to round it off and then call it Pansiya Panas Jataka Pota. Now this is a very old Buddhist scripture written about Lord Buddha stories, and you know the Jataka Katha, we call it, like the lives spent by Lord Buddha before he became Buddha and things like that, right, are written in those scriptures, in those in that book. There are many stories, 540 something. So that book was written in Pali. Okay, like the Bible was originally written in Hebrew, Quran is written in Arabic, Buddhist scriptures were written in Pali originally. Okay, Pali and Sanskrit, those languages. So now everybody can't understand Pali. Only bhikkhus can understand Pali because they are mastered it, right? So many people can understand this if you translate it into Sinhala. So that translation took place during the time of Kurunagala kingdom. You have to understand this. You have to remember this very well. Okay. So that book was translated to Sinhala. Which book? Pansiya Panas Jataka book. Pansiya Panas Jataka Pota or Pansiya Panas Jatake was translated from Pali to Sinhala during the time of Kurunagala kingdom. Okay. So Kurunagala kingdom was founded by a king called King Bhunekabahu II. Actually, he was the son of King Bhunekabahu I. Okay.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sir, who translated Pansiya Panas Jataka?
I don't remember exactly, but it was done during the time of King Kurunagala kingdom. Okay. Yeah, because mainly, you know, we had to understand that the scholars did that. I don't exactly remember the name who did it, but I can find it out for you. But it's not very important in your syllabus. Okay. But you have to understand that it was translated during the time of Kurunagala kingdom, and mainly those translations are done by scholars. You know who are scholars? Early times, you know, in the early days, scholars are mainly religious leaders, right? Mainly they are religious leaders and teachers. They are considered scholars. People who possessed big or massive amounts of knowledge in a particular area. They are called scholars, right? Today we call them academics, professors. Yeah. So those people are the ones who translate. Today we have professors in universities, right? Like that. Those days we had scholars in monasteries, in Pirivenas, senior monks. They were considered scholars, so they got together and translated all this. So look at these two kings, right? Kurunagala kingdom was founded by King Bhunekabahu II. He was the son of King Bhunekabahu I. Now, who's King Bhunekabahu I? He is the one who founded Yapaho kingdom. See, father found one kingdom, the son found another kingdom. Bonegabauda founded Dyapaho kingdom. Then his son founded Kurunagala kingdom. Look at this. That is why these kingdoms are not so powerful, right? Like it's like makeshift kingdom. One kingdom here, son is choosing another kingdom, right? Father is ruling another kingdom. Like, okay. So now these are some of the main things we can think of when it comes to the uplifting of Buddhism during Kurunagala period. Okay, Buddhism was uplifted. Okay, one such thing that was done to uplift Buddhism was the translation of Pansiyapanas Jataka Potta to Sinhala, from Pali to Sinhala. Okay, and the other one is like Dalada Sirita, Dalada Pujavaliya, Sinhala. This should be Bodhivansha and Anagata Vamsaya. Now these are all Sinhala literary religious literary sources. Okay, all these were compiled during the time of Kurunagala period. Okay, so that means we can understand that during the time of Kurunagala kingdom, a lot of attention was paid in uplifting Buddhism. Okay, we have to understand that very well. All right, before we go to Gampola kingdom, any questions from this part, guys?
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, did King Bonekabahu II only rule the Yapahu kingdom?
Yapahu kingdom.
No, sir.
Bonekabahu the first. Yeah,
Kurunagala.
Bonekabahu the first. Yeah. Because after Bonekabahu the first, Kurunagala kingdom was established by his son, Bonekabahu the second. Can you see that?
Sir, then Kurunagala kingdom was only ruled by King Bonekabahu II?
No. Parakram the fourth as well, his son. Bonekabahu the second had, I will share this tube with you. You can go through that. Not so important, okay? All right. That's why I'm not talking very like in detail about all those kings and everything. No need to remember all those kings and everything. 1 or 2 kings is enough. Who founded the kingdom? Yeah, it's enough, because you have to establish a connection, right? If something very significant took place during that king's time, then remembering the name of that king is important. You basically don't have to remember everything you see in the book, okay, for your exams, right? So whatever you have to remember, we'll be discussing it. See, for example,
Okay.
I'm telling you, Parakramabahu the second is very important, right? Why?
Because he was called that Kalikala Sahitya Sarvagna Pandita.
That's one reason. Not only that. Yeah, he's important because he managed to defeat Kalingamaga, right? Yeah, that's also important. Okay. He also faced invasions from Chandrabanu and managed to somehow repel those attacks. Important. See, there can be several reasons that a king is important. Okay, like let's say King Dutugamanu. Why is he important? Because he built Ruvanvelli Sahib. Yes, one reason. Because he managed to, basically he was considered a pioneer in centralizing power. He managed to defeat King Elara. Those are all reasons, right? So when I say about a king, you have to attach what significant events took place during his time. So it's easy for you to remember about that king. Okay, but you don't have to remember all the kings. Now, if you see the book, you have hundreds of kings mentioned here. You don't have to remember all of them, right? That's pure waste of time. We talk about an A pass here, right? To go for an A pass, you don't have to like focus. You have 8 more subjects to focus on, right? So your time is very limited. So let's focus on what you really have to focus. Okay. So leave it up to me to decide what you have to focus and how to teach you on what to focus and what to forget, right? Okay. But I'm telling you again, I've been telling you this for the past several months. You have to read the book. Okay. There's no other way, right? You have to read the book. But whatever you have to remember, I will give it to you like via these tubes and notes and videos and everything, right? Okay. But you have to read the book and understand, because Sometimes MCQs, yeah, they might come from those areas that you might not touch when you normally, when we discuss like this, you know, because we are meeting only for 2 hours a week, right? So we can't have like total contact 24 hours, 24/7. It's not possible. But there might be a few things, you know, the person who's making the paper might take out of. In order to tackle that, just read the book once, right, or twice when you have time, right? Okay. Let's go to Gampola Kingdom. Can finish this lesson today, and we can do some past papers related to this lesson as well, right? So when I start doing past papers, you will know what we have just learned and what's coming from the unit and yeah, right. So the basically forming the connection, forming the relationship. Okay. I have mentioned writing of Sandesha Kavya in front of Gampola Kingdom. Okay. When I say Gampola Kingdom, writing of Sandesha Kavya. Okay. When I say Kurunagala Kingdom, what should come into head? What should come into head?
Translating of Jataka
Exactly,
story.
exactly. It's translation of Jataka storybook or translation of Pansiyapanas Jataka. Very good, well done. So Gampola Kingdom, the most important thing, writing of Sandesha Kavya. Okay. Gampola Kingdom was established by a king called King Bhunekabahu IV in 1341. Gampola Kingdom. Okay. Now there are two very important temples in Gampola, Gadaladeniya and Lankatilaka. Gadaladeniya Vihare and Lankatilaka Vihare, they are called. Even today you can go and see them. Okay, they are so prominent temples built by King Bhunekabahu IV. Okay, and there were other kingdoms in Jaffna under R.A. Chakravarti. You know, let me just correct this spelling mistake. R.A. Chakravarti. Now there were two, you know, when Gampola Kingdom came to power, there were two other kingdoms also emerging in two areas in the country. Okay, we have to understand that very well. Jaffna area, Jaffna became a kingdom as well. Like a family called R.A. Chakravarti, or a lineage or a dynasty. Dynasty, family, royal lineage, everything the same, right? A dynasty called R.A. Chakravarti came to power in Jaffna area. They captured power in Jaffna area. They strengthened their power in Jaffna area. They started calling it Jaffna Kingdom. Okay. Then Raigama, you know Raigama area. Go to page number 101 again. Can you see Raigama here? Yeah. Can you guys see Raigama here? Can you see this? Let me. Yeah. Can you see Raigama here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So when you know where Kalutara is, Kalu River is, when you track that area, Raigam Korale, we call it the Kalutara area. Even today we call it Raigam Korale because of the ancient, you know, connection that we have, right? So when I say Raigam, Kalutara should come into head. This family called R.A. Chakravarti came in Jaffna, and Alakeshwar, Nishanka, especially there was a person called Nishanka Alakeshwar. So that family came to power in Raigam area. It's like two sub kingdoms when there's Gampola Kingdom. Again, what can you understand about this? These kingdoms are not powerful. Kurunagala, Gampola, Dambadini, they are not so powerful. Right? Invasions came from here and there. Why? Everybody started invading. Everybody gave it a try. Huh? We'll try and see if we can invade Sri Lanka. Something like that. You know, they were not, you know, we were not strong. Gampola Kingdom, when there's a king in Gampola Kingdom, King Bhunekabahu is ruling, and then another family is coming from Jaffna and establish their own kingdom. R.A. Chakravarti family in Jaffna. Then Alakeshwara family in Raigam, they came and they established their own kingdom. It's like semi-official sub-official kingdoms, kingdoms inside kingdoms, right? So that's one thing you have to remember. And then there was a tradition of inheritance of the kingship in Sri Lanka. Normally it was from father to son or from brother to brother. Okay, that was the tradition followed by kings in this country from the ancient times. But during the time of Gambala kingdom, this changed. This went from uncle to nephew. That means now if there's a king, if he has a sister, the sister's son will become the next king. It's like nephew. Okay. So let me.
Excuse me, sir.
Give me a second. I'm sorry. Give me a second. I'm not sharing the screen. Right? Yeah. All right. Yeah. Your question.
Sir, Arya Chakravarti was from South India who came and ruled Jaffna.
Arya Chakravarti was also an invader who came from Pandyan kingdom, right? That is different here. But here, Arya Chakravarti is a family who ruled Jaffna. Okay. We call them Arya Chakravarti dynasty or Arya Chakravarti family. Okay.
That means they were basically they were from Jaffna.
They might have had connections to India. Yeah. There's no actually, the history is very like blurred when it comes to the history of Jaffna kingdom. Everything that was written about Jaffna kingdom was only written a few hundred years ago, only like a 200-300 years ago. Okay, so because of that, we can't really trace it, like from where exactly they came. And because different scholars also have different opinions when it comes to Jaffna kingdom. Okay. Some people say that they were people from this country itself. Some scholars, let's say you go to a Tamil scholar, he might say that no, these are people, they didn't come from India, they were local people. If you go to an Indian scholar, he might tell that no, they came from India, they were basically invaders. And yeah, so it's a little ambiguous here, but don't worry. What we need to understand is there was a ruling family called Arya Chakravarti who ruled Jaffna area. Okay, but let me tell you, right? So again, kingship was passed from uncle to nephew as opposed to the normal tradition which was followed by the ancient kings in Sri Lanka. Now this changed in Gambala kingdom. Okay, and a very significant event took place during the time of Gambala kingdom. An Arab traveler called Ibn Battuta visited Sri Lanka during the time of when Gambala kingdom was there in Sri Lanka, during the time of Gambala kingdom. Now, why am I saying that the visit of Ibn Battuta is very important? Why?
He had good connections with the Arab countries.
Look, any foreign traveler or anybody from another country visiting Sri Lanka was considered very important. Okay, very, very important. You know why? Because when they visited Sri Lanka, okay, they wrote something about Sri Lanka, right? So this is so important, guys, because normally when an outsider comes to another country and writes something about that country, it is normally considered unbiased. Let's say I'm telling you to write a book about your family. Okay, will you write anything bad about your family in that book? No, right? No. So same like that, if somebody is writing about Sri Lankan history, a Sri Lankan is writing about Sri Lankan history, he always write very good things about that. But let's say somebody is coming from outside, we can have a very proper view. Okay, how the foreigners thought about our country, how they saw our country, right? So this is like a totally unbiased view. Let's say Robert Knox wrote it, right? Robert Knox, then Ibn Battuta, Fahian Thero, people who travel like that, they wrote a lot of things about Sri Lanka. So they are considered foreign literary sources for a reason. Why? Because they are so important. Okay, because they are so unbiased. We can understand a lot of things. like you said about the relationship we had with those countries as well as their opinions, how they saw our country, whether they saw it like a very good country in the region. Now how Robert Knox saw our country, how they saw our people. Robert Knox, he wrote a book called Eda Heladiva, right? In Eda Heladiva, have you read that book? I invite you guys to read that book, right? If you can find it. So in Eda Heladiva, it's mentioned that Sri Lankan people do not lie. Sri Lankan people hate lying. Sri Lankan people never drink alcohol. They hate drinking alcohol. Yeah. Written in that book. Look at what's happening now, right? Everywhere you go, you hear lies. Everywhere you go, you see bars, alcohol. Right? Look what has happened to our country. Look how Robert Knox, during the time of Robert Knox, how we used to live. We used to live very, very prominent, very good lifestyles in the past. We were respected in the whole region. Our country was very powerful, and we were respected. We upheld our traditions. We followed our religions. Everything was we collected a tax ruling system, governing, everything was done in a proper way. Everything was perfect. Right? Now, you see, so because those people wrote about those things, today we know, okay, we used to live like that and we are living like this today. What a shame, right? That is why those accounts are very important. Let it be Fahiantero, let it be Ibn Battuta, let it be Robert Knox. Right? That's why they are so important. All right. So, and also Gampola Kingdom faced another invasion from a Chinese general called Chen Ho. Chen Ho was the general who came to Sri Lanka, invaded Gampola Kingdom. Actually, he had a problem with Alakeshwar. Okay, so that's the full story is mentioned in the book, but not so important. So I'm not going to talk about that in detail here. Right? They had some disputes. They were not respected and things like that, and they came and they captured some members of Alakeshwar family, and they took them prisoner. It's a big story behind it. Anyway, what we need to understand, what we need to remember here is there was a Chinese invasion that took place, led by a general called Chen Ho in 1411. Basically, when Gampola Kingdom was functioning. Okay, right. So again, Kurunagala Kingdom, translating of the Pansepanas Jataka Pota, Gampola Kingdom, writing of Sandesha Kavyas, and Kotte Kingdom is considered golden age of Sinhala literature, because there was a lot of Sinhala books and a lot of contribution happened during the time of Kotte Kingdom towards Sinhala literature. Okay, this is so important. All right. So when it comes to the
Sir, did the Chinese invasion by General Chen Ho decline the Gampola Kingdom?
No, not really. No, they didn't capture, and they didn't capture the country and stayed here. They basically came on a purpose. They had some disputes, They basically had a dispute with Alakeshwaras, and then they came and they attacked Alakeshwara, defeated them, took some people prisoner, and they left. Okay, but that's basically an invasion. But understand the meaning of invasion and occupation, the difference of meaning, right? Invasion can be basically an attack, invasion. But you invade means you basically attack. You occupy means you stay there. Okay, so some invasion now Kalingamaga, it was an invasion as well as an occupation. Elara, during the time of King Dutugamunu, who was ruling Anuradhapura, Elara was an invader and an occupier. He invaded and he started ruling the country. But Chinese, they didn't occupy the country. Okay, you can understand that, right? I mean, you can think and understand that, right? If somebody occupied the country, basically, if another country attacks another country and occupies that country, most of the cultural things and everything will get transferred from that country to the occupying country. Okay, like what we are experiencing today, right? Our court system, right? Brought by the Dutch, then perfected by the English, right? We'll talk about those things when we are discussing about grade 11 content. Okay, so the culture, the words, Almira, where that word is coming from? Portuguese, the Dutch words, right? Veranda, where's that word coming? Sapatua, what that word is. So when somebody is coming and occupying a country, normally the original countries, culture, tradition, language, everything will stop. We don't see any Chinese, we don't see many Chinese things here in Sri Lanka, right? I mean, of recent we can see Chinese projects coming up, but nothing related to Chinese architecture, words, and very limited, right? Very limited. So those are not occupations. Basically, those are invasions, fights, and that's it.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, Chenho took Alakeshwara as a prisoner.
Yeah.
When he was ruling Raigama, right?
Actually, I told you that there were three kingdoms, right? Gampola was the main kingdom. Okay, Gampola was the main kingdom. There were two other kingdoms in Jaffna and Raigama as well. They are like semi-official. Even though they were separate kingdoms, they functioned under Gampola kingdom. Gampola kingdom was the main kingdom.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Gampola kingdom was the main kingdom. So Alakeshwar, they were ruling that area, but they had a problem with Chenho. So Chenho came and basically, you attack a country, right? So the main kingdom in Sri Lanka was Gampola kingdom. So we can say that during the time of Gampola kingdom, this invasion took place. But they had problems with Alakeshwar. Okay. Chenho had problems with Alakeshwar. They visited once and they were not respected, and disputes, diplomatic disputes. They came with an army and they defeated, and then they took them prisoner. What happened to them? Don't know. All right. So can you all see my screen? No, sorry, I think I'm not sharing it.
Yes.
All right. So let's go to the Kotte kingdom, golden age of Sinhala literature once again. So now Kotte kingdom is very important. Kotte kingdom became a very powerful kingdom, guys. Now all the previous kingdoms we are talking about, Kurunagala, Dambadeniya, like Yapahua, not so impressive, not so powerful. Kotte kingdom, as opposed to those things, Kotte kingdom became a powerful kingdom. Okay, and we can call it the golden age of Sinhala literature as well. So King Parakrama VI was the king who founded Kotte kingdom, and he brought Vanni areas under the rule of Kotte kingdom. Now there were areas near around Vanni. Vanni means the northern part of the country, and also some parts of the east, under different rulers, like regional rulers. Like we were talking about Parumagas those days, like different rulers were ruling their own areas. Now Kotte kingdom, founded by King Parakrama VI, he was able to convince all those rulers and bring them under the control of Kotte kingdom. Okay, and also he didn't stop there. He even won Jaffna, he even brought Jaffna under his control by sending an army led by Sapumal Kumaraya, Prince Sapumal. Okay, Prince Sapumal was a renowned warrior those days. An army led by Prince Sapumal was sent by King Parakrama VI. Go and get the control, or get Jaffna under our control. He did that. Okay, who did it? Prince Sapumal, right? And also King Parakrama VI is so important because he made a lot of contributions when it comes to enhancing Sinhala literature or educational literature. There are other reasons that he is so important. Go to page number 102. I have taken 3 here because I thought those 3 are very important. You have to remember at least 3, like I am always telling you, right? You have to remember 3. Okay. So you can remember a few more if you like. All right. Give me a second. Yeah, you can see a few more, right? Reasons.
Excuse me, sir.
Puta, yeah, 1 second. Yeah, I have a very good question. Give me a second. Let me read the question. Yeah, I have a question from Puta. Was the power of the country again centralized during Corte period? Kind of. Kind of. Yeah. We can't say that it was fully centralized, like I told you, like golden age, Anuradhapura, Polonnaru, that period never came again. This is kind of centralized because Kotte, whenever there's a powerful kingdom, yeah, almost centralized, but not like before, not exactly like before, because when a king is changing, the power is changing and everything falls back to the previous places after that. And during the time of Kotte, they also faced Portuguese invasion. Portuguese came to Sri Lanka, and again the Dutch came, and then the English came. So because of that, the centralized nature never happened again. But Kandyan Kingdom, again, when Kandyan Kingdom was at its peak, it enjoyed a lot of basically centralized power. But again, during the time of Kandyan Kingdom, the coastal areas were ruled by the Portuguese, Dutch, and the English. So it was never that golden age like Anuradhapura Polonnaru. Yeah, question. Somebody had a question?
Sir, where is Vanni located?
Vanni actually a region. Okay, it's a region in the northern part of the country. Jaffna, right? Yeah. See,
Yes.
this region called Vanni here. This region. Okay, this. Vaunia, right? Vaunia is somewhere here. Okay, this is Anuradhapura. This is Vaunia is somewhere here. Okay, this region was called Vanni. This whole region, this some parts of the east, some parts of the north. That area was called Vanni. So they were like they are not very populated areas. No big crowd there. Like regions, small regions. So those were ruled by people called Vanyas. We come to that next. Okay, Jaffna Kingdom and the Vanyas. Now Jaffna Kingdom was founded officially according to the scriptures. Okay, we don't know whether it's true or not because some of these writings were written very later. Okay, because we can't really trace when Jaffna Kingdom started and everything, because most of the literature that is written on Jaffna Kingdom is very new. Okay, anyway, what we need to understand is Arya Chakravarti is the dynasty or the lineage or the ruling family who ruled Jaffna Kingdom. Okay, the fall of Jaffna Kingdom actually happened with the invasion of the Portuguese of Jaffna, right? Portuguese captured Jaffna, put an end to the Jaffna Kingdom. Okay, before that actually Jaffna Kingdom was sometimes independent, sometimes they acted under the Kandyan Kingdom, supporting the Kandyan Kingdom, and later on they were invaded by the Portuguese and defeated, and Portuguese started ruling those areas as well. Okay, so founded by Vijay Kulanke Arya Chakravarti. He is the one who founded Jaffna Kingdom. We can learn a little more about Jaffna Kingdom in lesson number 10. Like we can learn about Pararajasekaram, Sankili, and people like that in lesson number 10. Okay. Here we are not going to go deep into this. We're just gonna what we are gonna learn here is, okay, there were kingdoms like this and different dynasties ruled these kingdoms, right? And this book is important. That's why I mentioned it here. Yalpana Vaipava Malay. Okay, Yalpana Vaipava Malay is a famous book that was written in 18th century, I think. Yes, more than 250 years ago. But this mentions about, like contains information about this kingdom. Okay, so fairly new, right? Fairly new. And then I have mentioned one ERC. I'm going to share this tweet with you guys. When you are free, just go through this. You can learn a lot from this, right? So when the Rajarata civilization declined, like the Polonnaruwa kingdom declined, small ruling areas in Vanni region started emerging. Vanni region is what I just showed you, that region, you know, in the northern part, right? So those rulers who started ruling their respective areas were called Vanniyars. Okay, Vanniyars. So Vanniyars, yeah, mostly they were under the main kingdoms like Gampola kingdom. And, okay, but from time to time they also enjoyed a little power, like you call it independence. You can decide on your own. But especially when it comes to the foreign trade and everything, it was the main kingdom's king who had the monopoly. Okay, foreign trade and everything, no one else can do. Regional rulers can't engage in foreign trade. Okay, only the main king can. Okay.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
So can you explain that Vanniyas once again?
Yeah. So Vanniyas are actually regional rulers who rule different places in the Vanni region. Okay. There was a region called Vanni region, like the northern, some parts of the north and some parts of the east. There were several regions, like small pockets, like small regions ruled by different people, different rulers. They are called Vanniyas. Okay. Got it?
Yes, sir. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So one is the region. In that region, there were small areas. So those areas were ruled by leaders called Vanniyas. Okay.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
So why do we call that they were under the main kingdoms?
Because you know, they were regional rulers. They didn't enjoy powers of a full king, or they didn't have the resources to establish their own kingdoms, right? So they were basically regional rulers. So whenever the main ruler, now you know, like let's say the main king wanted to establish power, right? Normally they go, they send an army, they show you a power, and you know, either you like it or not. Sometimes you like it, sometimes you don't like it. If you don't support, you go by force, you attack with the army and get the support, right? That's how it happened. Okay. So they were also mostly acting under the main king, but they enjoyed some power on their own. Okay. They also enjoyed. Vanniyars, who were regional rulers, also enjoyed some independence, but not full independence. Okay, they were not allowed to act like separate kingdoms. They were under the main king. Question? Yeah. Yes, Saja. When a rule was imposed by a king of the country, Vanniyars had to follow them. Yeah. When there's especially, I told you that especially when it comes to foreign trade and everything, the main king is the one who will decide. Vanniyars can't come and okay, I have, you know, I have cinnamon in my region, I can send them to Europe, or I can send them to Arabia and get money. No, you can't do that. You have to call the main king. You have to ask his permission. Then only you can do. But you can control your area, no problem. The main king can't be everywhere, right? The main king, let's say Gampolo king, you know, king of Gampolo, king of Kandy, for example, he can't be everywhere. He will give you some powers as long as you maintain good relationships, right? Now, especially when it comes to Jaffna kingdom, you know, one of the main reasons the Portuguese wanted to capture Jaffna is because the growing relationship between Jaffna and Kandy. Jaffna kingdom, now they started supporting Kandyan kingdom. You know, they had a very good relationship, especially when dealing with India. Now Jaffna was like the mediator, especially when it comes to dealing with India. Now the Portuguese didn't like this. The Portuguese wanted to put an end to this. That's why they attacked Jaffna. They put a they completely destroyed the kingdom. They captured the kingdom. There was no Jaffna kingdom after. So even though there was another kingdom in Jaffna, most of the time they acted like a semi-official kingdom supporting the main king. There were problems. Yeah, I'm not saying no, but not big problems. Okay. So we'll talk a little about the economic style before we go into the past papers. Yeah, we have a little more to cover, right? Economic style. Yeah, there's no much things to talk about the economic style. Again, agriculture was the main livelihood, even though people started shifting from Rajarata to other areas. Okay, agriculture was the main livelihood, but the surplus, so we call it atirikte. In Sinhala, we call it atirikte. Okay, surplus was sold, and you know, money and everything was exchanged, and basically a commercial economy started emerging. Okay, so these are some of the items that were sold in markets or exported, especially cinnamon, areca nut, cardamom, nutmeg. They were all export. Okay, you know what's areca nut? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
What's areca nut? What? Yeah. Areca nut. You
It's
eat with
just
big.
like a
Yeah.
small coconut.
Yeah, like small coconut. Yeah. Puak. Puak in Sinhala we call it puak. Cardamom. Cinnamon, you know, right? Nutmeg means sadika. You know the big one, like sadika. Just type in Google and see, right? Okay,
With
those
red color
are
cover.
main. Yeah, yeah, the red color. So you know,
Inasal?
cardamom. Yeah, enasal. Yes, cardamom is enasal. Hmm? The one which gives you a very good smell, right? Areca nut again. Cinnamon is also, yeah. Cinnamon is also the it's a spice that gives you a lot of good smell, right? Actually, Sri Lankan cinnamon was considered one of the best cinnamon in the whole world those days. Okay, so that is why, you know, cinnamon was growing in in the jungle. People had to go to the jungle and peel cinnamon, right? Later, the Dutch realized this. Okay, you can earn a lot of money. Then they started cultivating cinnamon in estates. Okay. But today, Sri Lankan cinnamon, you know, not in high demand. Like Sri Lankan tea those days, you know, like now India, China, they actually have captured the market. Yeah. When it comes to tea, when it comes to Sri Lankan cinnamon, everything. But still we do export, but not like before. You know, we actually, you know, losing the competition. So a lot of competition. China, India, they invest, they put a lot of money into research and everything. They grow their products very well, and we are not using technology like before, you know, like we used to. Something to think about. And we had trade relationship. This is very important, guys. We had trade relationships with many countries like India, Arabia, China. We actually maintain good relationships with them, right? But when the Portuguese came, and when they actually started controlling our ports and everything, when the Dutch came, when the English came, they actually started controlling our economy, right? So because of that, we couldn't, you know, develop as a nation. We were under them, right? That's what actually happened to us. Okay. All right, so let's talk about the religion. Main religion, yeah, continue to be Buddhism. So but there were influences from other religions towards Buddhist practices, right? Like different gods like Upulvan Deviyan, then Vibhishana Deviyan, and Saman Deviyan. Saman Deviyan is considered to Saman Devi Adaviya. We normally call it the Sripada, the Adam's Peak. So people call it Saman Deyange Adaviya. So that means, like, you know, regional gods. So they was also started, you know, like worshipping. Even though, you know, you don't see these things in Buddhist scriptures, the original Buddhist scriptures. You go to Tripitaka, you don't see Saman Deviyan in Tripitaka. Okay, we have to understand that. But with the culture, with the tradition, with the influence of other invasions, and with the influence of other cultures and everything, these practices also came into Buddhism, right? We have to understand that. Okay. And Hinduism, when it comes to Hinduism, Shiva Devala was constructed in Javardhanapura, Kotte. And also Munneshwaram, you know, Tiruketishwaram and Koneshwaram, two very important ancient Hindu religious places in Sri Lanka. Okay. Tiruketishwaram and Koneshwaram. Koneshwaram in Trincomalee, Tiruketishwaram in Manna, right? Munneshwaram is in Chilla. Okay, so Munneshwaram also became a very important place. Even today, it's one of the most important place for Hindus in Sri Lanka. Okay, a very sacred place, a temple, which is located in Chilla. Yeah.
So Koneshwaram is in Jaffna, right?
Koneshwaram is in Trincomalee.
So then the other one, the
Tiruketishwaram. That's in Manna, near Manna, Matota. Yeah, you know Matota?
oh yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah. Munneshwaram is in Chilla. Okay, you know where to find Chilla in the map?
Near Putlam.
Yeah, between Puttalam and Nigambu. Okay, give me a second. I'll share the map. Very important because you know they might ask you to mark Chilla. Can you see the Sri Lankan map here? Yeah. So you know Puttalam is here, right? This is Colombo, Nigambu. Here Chilla is here. In the middle of Nigambu and Puttalam. Here. Here Munneshwaram. Can you see Munneshwaram? Can you all see Munneshwaram, guys?
Yes, sir.
All right. So this is Munneshwaram, right? Munneshwaram Kovil is a very important place for the Hindu community in Sri Lanka. Right. Then Islamic religious places like mosques also were built in the coastal areas because many Muslims lived in coastal areas like Berwala. You go to even today, you know, you go to Berwala, you see this. There's a mosque called you call it Kechimale Mosque in Berwala, more than 1,000 years old. So we can understand that ancient Arab traders and all they came and settled there. So that's how those mosques and everything were built. Like the Kovils, Koneshwaram, Tiruketishwaram has a very long history. Same like that, there are other Muslim religious places which has a long history as well. Okay. All right. And this is important. So we can conclude our lesson from this, and we'll discuss some past papers after this, right? So arts and architecture. Now when it comes to the Yapahua kingdom, they say that it's a little bit of influence from Cambodian and Pandyan, like Indian influence, especially the steps in Yapahua. Have you visited Yapahua? Anybody got a chance to visit Yapahua? Have you seen Yapahua Singha?
Sir, where is Yapahua?
Yapahua. How to go to Yapahua? You go to Kurunegala first, then you go towards Anuradhapura, you see Yapahua. Yeah. I have gone there.
So it's in Kurunegala
That's
side.
around 15 years ago. Yeah, I think in 2008 I visited Yapahua. Yeah, it's almost, yeah. So you see this.
So it's in Kurunegala side.
Yeah, Kurunegala. You know, from Kurunegala you have to go towards Anuradhapura, towards north. Okay, Yapahua. If you get a chance to go to Yapahua, go there. Right, visit that place. Very beautiful. You can go to, you know, there's a beautiful fort there. Yapahua. There's a museum as well. You can see the ancient architecture and everything there. The kingdom basically. Kurunegala. Kurunegala also there are many good places to visit in Kurunegala. Right. Recently, Kurunegala was in the news as well because they destroyed some ancient building there or something, Rajya Sabha Mandape or something like that, right? So Kurunegala. Again, when you go to those places, Kurunegala, Damadeni, Yapahua, even today you can Gampola, you can see a lot of ruins, architectural creations and everything there. Okay, if you get a chance, please go and watch. Lanka Tilaka and Gadaladini again, which belong to the Gampol era. You can go and see them, right? And Ambeke Devale, again, especially when it comes to wooden carvings, Lee Katam. Lee means wood, Katam means carvings. Okay, so wooden carvings. So Lee Katam, when it comes to that, Ambeke Devale is one of the most prominent places. Okay, in Gampola period. Right? And again, I have mentioned Kausilumina here. Sorry about the spellings. I will review the spellings and send you guys. So King Parakram Bahu II is the one who is believed to have written Kausilam. Okay. Writing of Sandesha Kavya started during Gampola period. Now we can see that Sandesha Kavyas were written during Gampola period. Now what is Sandesha? What is Kavya? Sandesha means what? In Sinhala. You know the meaning of Sandesha? Anybody? Sandesha means basically a message. Okay. Sandesha means message. Yeah, very good. Shamal, you did it. Sandesha means message. So to send a message, you normally, you send a message in a poetic way. You write a beautiful poem, you write a set of poems and send it. Like that's how you send it. It can be from the king to queen, or from somebody to somebody, from a king to king, somebody, right? From like a scholar to scholar, like that. So Paravi Mayura Sandesha, Tisara Sandesha, Paravi Sandesha, there are different types of Sandeshas. Right? So
Silalihini.
Sorry? Which one?
Silalihini Sandesh.
Salalini Sandesha, yeah. Salalini Sandesha. So if you get a chance, like, look, you guys are international school students, so mostly you won't have these, like mingling with these Sinhala literature mostly. But you have Sinhala literature, right? But mostly, there will be a very limited knowledge when it comes to literature about these things, But I remember when I did my O-levels in Sinhala medium. So, you learn in Sinhala. Okay, very good. So I studied my O-levels in Sinhala medium. We used to have a lot of, additional reading and everything those days. But now I don't think the students really have the time to do those. I remember, I read Eda Heladiva, the book in full, in Sinhala. So, yeah, Robert Knox, Eda Heladiva. We could buy it. It was very cheap, 75 rupees or something. Gunasena, Gunasena Publishers. So everything is there. Sometimes, you don't even understand the Sinhala written there. Very old Sinhala, It's very nice. So it's really important for us to read those things and to be able to enjoy it, Yeah. To enjoy a good book. That's called range. Like I mentioned, change. There's something called range as well. Range. The range that you have in appreciating something. Yeah. So Kota period was considered the golden age of Sinhala literature because there was a lot of books and poems, everything written during that. When I talk about range, guys, how do you enjoy something? Before you go into the past, let's take 5 minutes to talk about this, right? Range. Now, when I see you guys are 16 years old, I personally see, like, I'm 34, right? So when I say 16, I personally feel like the modern generation, they don't have big range in enjoying. Let's say I can enjoy pretty much everything, many things. Like I can enjoy Tamil songs, Sinhala songs. When I say Sinhala songs, I can enjoy, this is called the range, okay? It's called the range. I enjoy, Amaradeva songs, right? Then I enjoy, like Rukanta songs. Then I can enjoy Atma Lenage songs. And I also can enjoy these Basti songs, okay? Sometimes, right? That's range, like you have a big range. So I can enjoy Tamil songs, I can enjoy Arabic songs, Hindi songs, and English songs. You can enjoy many things. Your range is very big. Let's say you are enjoying only this type of songs or this type of movies or this type of books. That's your range is limited. So if you want to be like a person with a broad perspective, if you want to see things in different ways, let's say that's what will make you a complete human being, right? You need to improve that range. You need to look at things from different perspectives, different angles. Your thinking must be so advanced. I can enjoy a book, I can enjoy a magazine, I can enjoy reading the screen in the phone, I can enjoy a video. I can basically enjoy anything. My range is so huge. The modern generation, I don't see that. I don't see them reading books much. They are spending time in front of the screen. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, it's a good thing as long as you are learning something. But learning and enjoying, yeah, but again you must be able to enjoy a book as well. The feel is different. The feel, it's like a good example is like you are playing a game in your mobile phone, and you're enjoying it, right? And you are basically sending a kite outside. You're feeling the string, and you are controlling it with the winds, and it's a different feeling. But you have to be able to enjoy both, right? That's the main thing. All right, any questions after this, guys? Let's go to some past papers then. Who's ready? Who's Rachel? Ryan? Is that Ryan? Ryan is different. Okay, I see Ryan. Is Habib here? Shamal. Okay, this is Habib. All right. Okay. Let me share some past papers with you guys. All right. Here's the first one. 20. Question number 20. Can you see that? The importance of understanding this lesson in the order. We are just anyway, after reading the tute, you must be able to understand this. I will post the tute in the group. Okay, don't worry. So what's so important, guys, here? Give me a second. All right. All right. 19 and 20, right? Yeah, you can do 19 as well. Do 19 and 20, take time, it's okay.